This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you, Jackson. You guys will get started. It's 3:33. This is call to order for the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee meeting. Roll call, please.
Tracy Fluke.
Here.
Kyle Jago.
Here.
Levi Boyd.
Here.
Jessica Atkinson.
Here.
Dale Schmidt.
Here.
Kim Shanna.
Here.
Sharon Cowell.
Here.
Great.
Let's stand for the pledge,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. A motion to approve the agenda, but maybe before we do that, I don't know if anyone noticed the agenda is slightly different now. Our attorney has made some recommendations with, and Joel, I'll ask you to kind of expand on this a little bit, with our agendas, and we will no longer have staff reports on there, and we will no longer have public comment on our agendas. If there's anything that we want to talk about, it will be an agenda item or it'll be under discussion. So, Joel, maybe if you can just explain. So that's kind of the future agendas, Jessica.
On the last meeting, in the meeting notes here, it says that we were going to consider, discuss, act on related regulation of motorcycles, bicycles, personal assist vehicles, ATVs, electric scooters, and we were going to talk at the next meeting, the August meeting. It's not on this agenda. Are we going to move it forward another month?
We will. Staff has not had a chance to do the research that they wanted to on it, so they've not gotten it complete yet. So we'll just wait. When they're ready, we'll just kind of put it back on, so we'll keep bringing it forward.
Check that off.
Yeah, check that out. Yes. Yeah. So Joel, if you can maybe just expand on that real quick, if anything you want to add.
Sure. I think I have a question too. So on the agenda, so you know, staff reports and public comment. There's really kind of two reasons for that. The primary reason is regarding to public notice requirements for open meetings law. So in the state of Wisconsin, this committee would be considered a governmental body, and as such, it's required to comply with open meetings law. So part of the open meetings law is within 24 hours of a meeting. That would be the minimum. You have to post an agenda, if you will, or a notice of the meeting and the contents of discussion that will occur at that meeting. So oftentimes what we find is that when you have staff reports, there's no detail behind it, so the average citizen wouldn't necessarily know the items that are going to be discussed as it relates to that item. So if you look at the action items, they're very specific. We have to be specific and germane to that very item in our conversations and topic. If we talk outside of that, the general public wouldn't have notice of that conversation to occur. So with staff reports, what we found, particularly not necessarily at this committee meeting, but other committee meetings as well, is that we'll have an oral report presented by staff, and the general public would have really no basis for what the conversation is. So if you think back, if I were to use this committee as an example, the last time we met, I think was in July. So we skipped the August meeting. And public safety had a very, very nice report about traffic enforcement. And it was very detailed. We spent probably 30, 40 minutes kind of going through all of their activities as it relates to traffic enforcement, from the types of radar detection units they use, to flap cameras, to so on and so forth. The general public would have no knowledge that that was going to be the basis of conversation and discussion. And so they wouldn't be informed well enough from an open meetings law standpoint to, oh, I should be present at this meeting. I want to learn more. I want to know what's being discussed. Even if the item has no actionable task to it, even if it's just discussed, it still is required to be noticed properly on the agenda. So a staff report, even though you're not technically taking action on those items, it's a component of discussion, and the general public has a right to know what will be discussed in a governmental body. So that's really the basis behind it. The other challenge is it puts you as committee members at risk too. So even if we presented a written report and we orally provided that written report, oftentimes committee members will say, well, I have a question about such and such that may be somewhat related to it, but it's a different topic. And then you kind of go down a different pathway and you end up at third base, even though you're trying to only get to first, right? So it saves the committee a little bit that opportunity of kind of going down a path of having an item unnoticed. Now with that, any item that you want presented to the committee. So maybe on a quarterly basis, you want public safety to provide a report on traffic enforcement in the village. That's great. Let's put it on the agenda. Let's notice it properly, and then every quarter we do that. So don't look at it as a way to eliminate or reduce your ability to be informed or understand the operations of what the village is doing. Just look at it as a point of making sure that we're staying very specific to task and that we are complying with law. And we'll get it identified on the agenda. So either reach out to me, you can reach out to Tracy directly, Rex, Kelly for that matter, to say these things are of interest to us. Can we put it on our schedule and somehow get it added as a specific item on the agenda? When it comes to public comment period, what we found is very similarly. So if you recall, we had kind of 6 bullet points that were listed under public comment. Things not on the agenda, they can't be about staff, no derogatory statements, things of that nature. For the most part, Ashwaubenon, 99% of the time, no issues. But occasionally we'll have members of the public come in, make a statement, and then you as a committee member or even the board feel compelled to respond to that individual. And then when you create that response, now you are basically opening up that door of violating that open meeting law, because now you're discussing an item that wasn't on the agenda. So that becomes problematic as well, where you kind of go down a rabbit hole where you get to that point where you're now violating the law. Now you say, well, we've been doing this for decades, right? We've been doing it for 150 years. It's never been a problem. True, it's never been a problem, but it's still a violation of the law. So we want to make sure that we're complying with the law, even though it hasn't been a problem. We expect the same thing out of motorists when they're driving down the road, and whether they're speeding or not, right? We expect everyone to follow the law, even though they don't. 99% of the time, it's not a problem, except for that one time when somebody does something stupid, violates the law, and someone gets injured or whatnot, right? So we want to make sure we're doing that. Secondly, the other concern that we've been seeing, and this is related to some activities that we're seeing not only in the state of Wisconsin, but throughout the country, but there are these efforts from a First Amendment standpoint, where individuals come into these open meetings and make statements that are not on the agenda, they're not germane to the topic of conversation, and they derail the meeting. So meaning, I don't like Joel's draft t-shirt, Joel's an idiot, and they start attacking individual members of either the committee or the staff. And what we've been finding is that they're targeting municipalities that are going to take offense to their activities, either kick them out or remove them from the meeting because they'd be violating a meeting rule, or we've seen the extreme where they've been so derogatory, they've been arrested. And then they file suit against the municipality for an infringement of their First Amendment rights. Whether it's real or not, they file the suit, and there's generally monetary compensation that results in that. So what we're attempting to do with public comment period is put it specifically to the board so that they can address the board directly, right? No action can be taken from this committee anyway. We're a recommending body, goes to the board makes a final decision. The board can handle some of the challenges that may come from these First Amendment audits. I bring this up to, interestingly, we were talking, Patrick and I have been talking about this for several weeks now. But then interestingly, just this past Friday, these individual First Amendment auditors is what they like to call themselves. We're just at a city hall in northern Wisconsin, videotaping and doing some of these same activities. And they were in a local municipality in our area last week. I won't name names, but there'll be a video posted online, and they're attempting to really kind of target and get you to trip up in your efforts to maintain their First Amendment privileges. So to avoid that issue, to protect the village of Ashwaubenon, we're going to remove that from the agenda. And again, much like staff reports, if a citizen comes before you and says they have concerns about it, reach out to me, reach out to Tracy, we'll get it on the agenda. And then we can have a regular conversation about it and not violate either an individual's First Amendment or open meetings law. Certainly have them reach out to their trustee. If that's not Tracy, obviously they can reach out to the representative. This is not an effort to curtail conversation or points of discussion. It's an effort to be more measured in how we do it.
Thank you.
I find that a little upsetting, and I need to think about it, because our experience in this meeting with the open comment portion for the public is someone coming and talking about a dangerous driving situation at the high school. So that's something we wanted to know. But anticipation of the potential of someone doing something disruptive, we're removing that possibility. I just need a little time to, I know you're saying there's another route for that, but that's a lot of solution. There's a lot of permanent solution for something that hasn't been a problem for us.
Yeah, I would say like in that particular case, and maybe that individual didn't know that they could reach out to myself or a staff member or to their trustee. They thought, well, we can go to this committee. Or maybe because we had that public comment forum at that time, it was advised that we'll come to Bike and Ped Committee and address your concern during public comment. And so because we don't have that period now the response is in all likelihood, they reach out, right? They reach out to somebody and they say, well, how can I have this issue best addressed? Who do I talk to? And oftentimes it's, well, you can either talk to staff will refer to the issue to a trustee, or it begins with the trustee and it kind of reverts its way back. So if you hear those things from residents and constituents in the community, again, they can reach out to staff. You can reach out to staff and say, I heard this concern. Can we place it on the agenda so that it can be properly discussed under open meetings law? There's nothing under statutes, even at the village board level, that requires a governing body in Wisconsin to have a public comment forum. So city councils, village boards, they don't have to do that at all. The only time they would have to under law is that when a public hearing is required on a specific matter on the agenda. So it's best to reach out to an elected official, staff member, a member of the committee, then reach out to either Tracy or I. I think just about any time somebody reaches out to us, we either can satisfy their concern outside of a meeting, or if we can't, because it's like a policy issue or it kind of extends beyond a singular point of concern, then we bring it forward to the committee and it can be a matter that's discussed and deliberated.
You know, and the agenda was set, and just for your background, before this committee was an official committee, it was just like an ad hoc, I guess you would maybe call it. So we had a little more leniency in how we could handle things at that time because we weren't an official. And so, you know, the agenda's been that way, like Joel said, like forever. And I know what you're saying, you know, you don't want to stifle communication either, but I think if the village gets the word out enough and maybe tries to let people know there is still a way that you can get your questions answered.
This is something that happens more routinely at the village board level, where a constituent may reach out more particularly to staff, and let's say it's a policy issue. So it's not something that the village has addressed currently under ordinance or administrative policy or past practice. They want this issue addressed. So they either start at a staff level, they'll contact Village Hall, I'll have communication with them, or a department head may, or it may even start at a trustee level. In that case, the trustee says, you know, I don't support this. So if it comes to staff members reach out to the trustee or the village president and say, do you have any support in this item coming forward at a board meeting to be placed on the agenda? If either the president or the trustee says, yes, I have an interest, it goes on the agenda. Our president's very good about, the trustee asks for an item to be placed on the agenda, it gets placed on the agenda. If neither trustee or president has an interest in placing this on the agenda, or there isn't some kind of lawful requirement that we need to, you know, present this item, then we encourage that individual to come during the public comment forum of village board, because we will tell them that at present, your elected official, your trustee does not support it. You're more than welcome to reach out to them directly. We don't have any support to place it on the agenda at this time. You're welcome to come during public comment period. Maybe there's another trustee that represents a different ward that has an interest in bringing that on, and then they can take action at their meeting to have it placed on the agenda for a future meeting. And there's a number of examples where that happens from time to time.
Joel, so a couple of things. One is the village board and a committee member at risk if there was a lawsuit?
Certainly the board. So as long as you, as a committee, or the board for that matter, or staff members, as long as you work within your scope of authority, what you are responsible for conducting, then you are immune in the state of Wisconsin from any personal liability. If you act outside of your scope of authority, then that does open up a window of opportunity for individuals to be named.
So is it possible to, because you said a lot, right? Is it possible to narrow down what these things that we're supposed to follow? Like you said, it was in what we signed off on, right? But where is that located? Because I need to read that more than once.
Sure.
Just so because we talked about it here, right? But that was quick.
Sure.
So I just want to educate myself for future to know that, no, we shouldn't be doing that. We need to have you contact whatever committee it is to have that discussion.
Sure.
If that's possible, just to familiarize myself better.
Yeah, if I understand you correctly, are you looking for just the village's code of ethics, open meetings law requirements?
Whatever would affect what you just talked about, with them coming around and I mean, that's the world of it. It's a shame because people they probably don't want to run for anything anymore.
So I think what I'll do is I can send out a couple things. Certainly send out the village's code of ethics, which is the document that Terry in the past had sent out to sign off on. Basically, it just ensures that you're meeting those obligations of your appointed position. Nothing earth-shattering or overwhelming. I could certainly send a copy of the open meetings law guide that comes from the Attorney General's office at the state. Now, bear with me. I think it's a 40-page document that's written by an Attorney General.
Yeah.
There's riveting information in there, but you may not want to read the whole thing. The key thing is that when a governing body, such as this, the Bike and Ped Committee is a standing committee of the village. They are considered a public governing body, so they have to comply with open meetings law. Every time we have a conversation, it must be done in a quorum open meeting, right? Unless it meets certain exemption requirements, which you guys will never probably get into that realm. It'll be an open meeting, properly noticed, meaning an agenda has to be noticed with items of discussion. The items of discussion that is identified on that public notice must be the items that are discussed. Things outside of those things, like as an example, we have 3 items for discussion today. Those are the items that should be germane to the conversation for that meeting.
So when we have those discussions, we have to stay on topic.
You should. I try the best I can to, hey, I think we're kind of going off topic, or let's assign this to the next meeting so that I can be properly noticed. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. But I can send that guide out too so that you have a copy of that. Yes, Pat.
We don't have the staff reports, and I understand the reason for the staff reports because the open meeting law requires specific topics. The one staff report that I would miss is Rex's report saying what's going on. So it's my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I could well be, we need an agenda item sort of specific to what the report might contain.
Yeah, so I think what we can do, again, we can look at it, and this could be a topic of a future conversation, because this is kind of, we're getting into that realm of we're extending our conversation on what an agenda should include. But regardless, we could have, what we often find is you might have staff reports, but they're written staff reports. It's a receive and accept, receive and place on file. When you start to have this blank general staff comments, staff reports, staff or, maybe the chairperson wants to have a 30-minute speech at the start of every meeting, but it could be about
That'd be
anything.
great.
Yes, that's where we start to get into topics that aren't specifically identified, that the general public wouldn't have reason to understand are going to be discussed when we run into problems. So a written staff report that is received and accepted, and as long as we stay specific and germane to the items on that staff report, we're okay. It's where we start, where we have these open reports and comment periods, where we get into trouble.
So we can do a written report, but we just can't discuss anything on it. Is that still okay?
The agenda has to say what your report, like, is it gonna say schedule of events for September, October, November?
When you read the open meetings law guide, it'll talk about staff reports. And so as an example, let's say your report is very routine. Not picking on Rex, but let's pick on Brian Rickert. His staff report. His staff report is a written report, right? And it's very specific. Every month, here are the projects, 2024 projects that are being completed. Here's what's happening. That's it. Every month is the same thing, so you could identify staff reports, public works, update on 2024 projects. The general public would have reason to believe that you're going to be discussing 2024 projects. The Park and Rec report might be the same thing. Now, Rex has got a number of projects that are germane to bike and ped, but we also get into conversations about playground surfacing at Waterford Park. Okay, that's off topic. The general public may not be understanding that that's germane to the conversation. Public safety talks about, they provide updates on pedestrian and bicycle crashes or near misses or something that's germane. The general public would have reason to believe that that's the topic of conversation. When you start talking about flock camera systems and how investigators are using them to track down sex traffickers, that's probably not germane to the topic. So as long as the staff reports are specific enough and they're germane to the topic of conversation that the general public would have reason to understand would be a point of conversation at the meeting, then you're okay. It's complicated.
So I guess what I would like to see, and if it's all right with you and all right with Rex, is she call Kelly and say, put an agenda item, I want to talk about the resurfacing the trail, or he could be pretty specific saying, I want to talk about what's going on at this park, what's going on at this trail, or what we're going to do for snow clearing on the paths or whatever. So,
And that can happen now. That would be an item that I want to have a conversation about, a specific item. It would show up under action items for discussion or possible action. And you would have an opportunity to talk very specifically about that.
but I guess Rex knows better than I do what's going on in his department, what they're working on that month, next month, 6 months. So if he would be the one to write it so that it's compliant with open meetings, it would be easy to put on the agenda, rather than just an open-ended Park and Rec report.
So theoretically, he wouldn't even have to write a whole written report. He could just put on there the topics he intended to discuss when he comes into the meeting, and that would be sufficient.
As a
As long
group,
as it's-
right? And to some degree for Tracy or myself, we would want to make sure that we are staying within the scope of that description, right? That if we're talking about the Industrial Park Trail repaving project, and now all of a sudden we're moving on to Main Avenue, that's a problem. Yeah, we're talking about a trail, but we're talking about two very distinct locations, two very distinct projects. All of a sudden we move on to the Argonne Street Boardwalk project. That's a problem, right? And we're extending beyond that. So we want to make sure that we're being specific so that the general public knows exactly what we're talking about.
So if one discussion leads to the next, then somebody has to say,
Yeah.
good point, let's talk about it next month.
Yes.
And we have to be cognizant of that, and we have to say, well, why can't we talk about it now? We know why we can't talk about it now.
Yes. And I think it's no different than public safety. I think their information they provide is very instrumental to this group as well, and so is public works, because if you think of it, it's engineering, education, and enforcement for walking, biking, and healthy communities. I mean, that's what's gonna that's what we're kind of doing. If we don't have engineering coming in and talking about projects, we don't have law enforcement talking about stuff, we're missing a couple of the key parts of what we're trying to do to make our community
So I guess we
safer.
kind of have to depend on those departments
Right.
to write the agenda item.
Well, and I'm sure they can. I mean, with Joel's guidance and Patrick's guidance, they can do that, and we can still have.
I think
we
I
can
had the
still-
attorney right at my side.
Yeah, we can have reports still, yeah. We just have to be cognizant of. not
If
getting off
that's all right with Rex and the other department.
How many days prior to the meeting do you have to have the agenda out?
So
24
staff,
Oh, it's
yeah.
24 hours.
So from a process standpoint, a meeting notice minimally has to be prepared 24 hours in advance.
Okay.
That's minimum.
Yeah.
Obviously, we want to produce that much earlier than that, the earlier the better.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, everyone gets their information in when an agenda more or less has been identified for a meeting. Items that relate to that generally come in the Wednesday before that meeting, the Wednesday proceeding. So items would come in Wednesday. Marcus, and for that matter, prepared the agenda. It goes out Thursday or Friday so that you have information in advance.
So this discussion's not on the agenda.
No, so I was just gonna say, you
Can
have
we
a lot to
motion
digest
to-
in, you guys. So the only thing we're talking about, it's on the agenda, is action on the agenda. So if you wanna do that, and please think about all this stuff and get your questions to Joel. Ask them, if you feel like you don't understand, you're not comfortable with it, just ask. But all that's on the agenda is, our agenda is action on agenda. So if we could take that motion, and please just think about this and reach out if you have questions or concerns, okay?
Yeah, can we motion to have this discussion at the next meeting?
You probably
Once
could,
we
we could do it on the
review
items
the-
for next agenda.
Okay.
At the very end, we'll talk about it then, and we'll put it on the agenda. Okay, so someone give me a motion on the agenda,
I
please.
motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Jessica, anyone?
Jessica.
I'll second it.
Second by Kyle Landale. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, and thank you, Joe, for clearing that up. But next item is action on the minutes from our July 8th meeting.
I move we approve them as presented.
Motion by Kyle,
I'll second it.
second by Dale. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you, everybody. All right, item 6 is items for discussion and possible action. So we have Susan, I believe, is on the line, hopefully. And Susan, tell me how to pronounce your last name again.
Hi, everyone. It's pronounced Gaeddert.
Gaeddert.
Like the
Okay,
A
Susan.
sound.
Okay, so we're gonna have a presentation by Susan Gaeddert. She's the Community Programs Director at 1000 Friends of Wisconsin. And Kyle and I were at a meeting with Wello recently, and she did a presentation there as well. And they're looking at bringing a community transportation academy to Green Bay. And Susan's gonna explain what it is and encourage people to get involved and partake in the academy that she's putting together. So with that, I think they have the PowerPoint for you, Susan, so you can just maybe let them know when you want them to switch.
Okay.
And introduce yourself.
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm not sure how to see the slides. Right now, I can see all of you, and Joel is here too. So I don't know when that'll show up on the screen for me.
He's working on it, Susan.
There we go.
Can you see?
Got it.
Okay.
Thank you. So thank you so much, everyone. Like she said, I'm Susan. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am with 1000 Friends of Wisconsin. So go to the next slide, please. And we are, in case you're not familiar with our organization, we were founded in the mid-1990s to just after the comprehensive planning law was passed in Wisconsin. We're a nonprofit organization. We specialize in land use and transportation, and we work at the community level to promote health and equity. And what we do is look at the intersection of land use, transportation, and climate. So the best way to stay up to date with what we're doing and what we have coming up in terms of webinars and things like that is to sign up for our e-news. I write the Active Wisconsin e-newsletter that is focused on active transportation specifically. So if you go to activewisconsin.org, you'll see a little button at the top of the page to sign up for that. Next slide. So just to give you an overview of the Academy and where it's been, this is a relatively new program of ours that started at the beginning of 2023, and there was a lot of planning that went into that. But as you can see, I'm actually based in Madison, so I'm the little blob there in the middle of Dane County. But I've run this program in La Crosse, Stevens Point, and Beloit. I just got started in Kenosha, and we're talking about the possibility of bringing it to the Green Bay area next year. Next slide. So speaking to a bike ped committee, I think that all of these things are going to feel very familiar to you, but we started the Academy because a lot of the issues that advocates have been working on for years and years, and the professionals in the sector know about, is the ways transportation affects everyday life, the way it's linked to climate and health, and also all the different ways it intersects with social inequality, racial disparities, a lot of those big social and cultural issues that many people are concerned about. We really saw public awareness growing, especially during the pandemic, because of the disruptions that COVID caused in early 2020. So we were seeing a lot of major media outlets covering things like the pedestrian safety crisis. Suddenly nobody could find a bicycle. I don't know if you all remember that. Some streets were closed off, to give people a space to gather safely. So even though a lot of that has come back to pre-pandemic norms, there's just more awareness. And people who want to be involved and have an impact understand that the local level is where they can really do it. So we started this academy, which really works at the local level. So next slide. So what it is a free course. We have grant funding, or we raise money to run it so that we can run it for free for anybody who wants to learn about local transportation in their own city or region. So it is not centered around one plan or one process underway, though we do custom tailor it for each city or each community where we bring it. It's more about general knowledge building for people who want to be involved and be more effective. So one of the most important aspects of it is that it's an opportunity for really deep public engagement, for people to get involved before everything blows up and turns into a big controversy, for people to get to know others in the community who care about the same things, and to connect with their local leaders who are actually carrying out those plans and processes. So ultimately, the goal is networks that work better for everyone, but this is one of the ways we hope to get there. Next slide. So again, like a lot of the outcomes are tied to that, right? So even though transportation planning is extremely complex and it's impossible to learn everything about it, there's many levels of government and agencies and funding streams that are involved. What we're hoping to do is help demystify a lot of that, a lot of what goes into planning transportation systems. We're also really hoping that people who participate come out of it with a much better understanding of how transportation systems impact and interact with the social, racial, and economic equity issues that we're constantly facing. We want people to understand how it affects public health and climate change. And we want people to come out feeling that they can really be proactive and have some problem-solving strategies and know who to talk to and interact with in order to have impact. We want them to feel connected with the community and other people in it. And where I'm coming from, I think that most of the space we dedicate to transportation is public space, and we think the public has the right to be more involved in how that space is designed and used. Next slide. So that means that the Academy is really for anybody who has a healthy curiosity about transportation and the willingness to spend some time, to commit some time to learning about it. So we have no prerequisites or requirements of any specific kind. You don't have to have a background or a degree or anything like that. We have found that it works best when we have a really diverse cross-section of participants. a diverse cross-section of the community. So we've had a wide age range, like we've had college students through retirees in their 70s. We have people from a variety of professional backgrounds and lived experience. And what happens is they bring all of that into the class and the conversation, and it just makes the whole experience richer because you're combining that with, you know, the expert guest speakers we're bringing in and so forth. So, you know, we've seen people who are advocates for something specific, like say disabled people or transit access or something, that just want to broaden their knowledge base. We've also had a lot of young professionals participate as professional development. So we've had city planners and county health staff and things like that as well. Next slide. So the way it works, it is a class, like I said. It's 9 to 10 weeks, kind of depending on how the schedule shakes out. We have found the most success with Wednesdays from 4 to 6 p.m., but that's, you know, flexible. It's just that's the time that seems to work. About half the sessions meet face-to-face, half are virtual on Zoom, and that's a matter of guest speakers not necessarily being, some of them are local, some of them are not, and there's weather to take into account and everything. But each week there is a different topic. Usually we have a guest speaker for each topic. And because this is a professional learning opportunity, we do offer credit for college students. I always work with the local university or college to offer that. And we have professional credits for planners as well. There's also a final project opportunity, which I'll get to in just a little bit. Next slide. So this is a list of the topics that we've covered so far. You'll notice that's more than 10. That's because, like I said at the top, we do custom tailor this everywhere we bring the academy, so that it's that it really speaks to the issues and the processes and the things that are going on in that community. So for instance, La Crosse just passed a climate action plan right before we started the academy there, and so we made sure that we spent a whole week talking about that. Beloit was in the middle of their comprehensive plan update when we held the academy there earlier this year, so I made sure that we brought in the planner and the consultant that they worked with to talk about how transportation fits into comprehensive planning. But at the same time, there are a lot of things that need to be covered no matter what. So this very first one on the list about the history and modern impact of redlining, urban renewal, and highways, I mean, that's the last 100 years of federal policy in all of those matters is the reason that our cities look the way they do everywhere. So we always make sure we cover that topic. We always cover dangerous by design because that's about how street design impacts safety and things like that. So some topics are universal and some are particular to the community. We bring in local speakers, we bring in speakers from national organizations. It kind of depends on the topic. Sometimes we pair them, but it's a wide variety. Next slide. One thing that I always work into the curriculum is some local tours. I think it's important for people to actually get out and experience these systems that we're talking about. So I always do a transit tour and I always organize a walk roll audit. So that hands-on field trip experience is great, even for grown-ups. I think that it's important to have people going all together on these. So if you're a regular transit user, great. But if you're with a whole class riding the bus, you can talk about that experience. You can share that. You can develop empathy for other people using the system. And you can document some local issues that way. And I always bring in the local, like whoever the transit operators and directors are, to talk about the system and you know, how they put funding together, who is their ridership, how do they plan routes, how would their lives be easier if they could have RTAs in Wisconsin and things like that. So if you go to the next slide, you'll see some photos from the transit tours we've taken. You can see everybody smiling. It's really fun to ride the bus. You wouldn't believe how much fun we have doing that. And yeah, we talk about it, and then we get on the bus and ride around for an hour and see what there is to see. And it's actually been one of my favorite sessions. So the next slide shows some pictures from walk audits we've done. So have you all done walk audits? Is this like something you're familiar with?
We did
Okay,
when we first started it. Yeah, we did. I think Leroy was probably on that, and we've done it with some of the committee members. Are probably on it, Susan.
Okay, so I think the concept is probably familiar, but it's basically just literally walking around and taking a very close look at a section of infrastructure, specifically to assess it for the safety of pedestrians and other vulnerable road users is the term that we use, but anybody not in a vehicle basically. So we're looking at a corridor or an intersection, or in one case it was the perimeter of a school. So just to see how well it's working. And I try to, if we don't have a wheelchair user in the class, I try to borrow one so that so you can see what it's like to try to actually roll a wheelchair across an intersection at a big crosswalk, something like that. But again, that is a way to pull together the stuff that we have talked about during the class, to really look at how it's working in the actual environment, to document it, and to sometimes come up with suggestions for improvements. There's a lot of toolkits and checklists online, so I usually pick one of those that we use too, and take lots and lots of pictures to document. But that's always an important session, and I'm always worried that it's going to rain during the walk audit. And so far, it's not. So next. My favorite part of the Academy is the last session where I turn it over to the participants and they offer their final project proposals. So the prompt is there on the top of the slide in italics. Choose a local transportation problem or issue and propose one or more solutions based on what we cover during the Academy. So depending on how many there are, it's usually 6 or 7. It's not required except for the college students taking credit, but everyone is encouraged to do a project. People will often work in groups or pairs as well, but they present their ideas. I invite local leaders, extra guests to attend and respond. So it's important for elected officials, public works staff, city planning staff, maybe local tourism board or economic development staff to hear what the constituents, members of the public, have to say, what their ideas are, and then they can respond in real time. So like public works is really helpful to have because they're the guys who know what road projects are coming up and stuff like that. So if you go to the next slide, I have found that while it's pretty wide open, you can do a project on whatever you want. I have found that for the most part, what people propose is usually very feasible, reasonable, things that could be done. And things tend to fall into one of two categories. They're either like very location oriented and kind of project specific, like here's a dangerous stretch of a road and I think crosswalks should be added here, here, and here. Or there was a proposal coming from Beloit to add some green infrastructure features to one of the public parking lots to make it more sustainable. So like very sort of concrete, actionable ideas. The other type of project that I have seen come in are more community-wide and policy-oriented, like proposing a change to zoning ordinance to eliminate parking minimums, or like in Stevens Point, there were several proposals having to do with snow clearance because that is a big concern up there, and I imagine it is up in the Green Bay area too. So while we don't always see immediate results from these proposals, we have seen some movement on them. And I think more important than the individual changes that are suggested through these final projects is the opportunity, again, for members of the public to communicate with local leaders about what's important to them, what they would like to see changed, and how the built transportation environment is actually affecting their lives. So I think that's pretty much all I have in terms of as far as overview. The next slide is what I am looking for in terms of feedback. So when I presented this to Wello last month, I heard a lot of really interesting feedback and really helpful background, but anything else you have to share, I would welcome. And if there's not time during the meeting today, you can always email me or contact me. But I'm interested to know how you think this would be beneficial in your area. What are some of the transportation issues there? I did hear a lot about football when I was there last month, so I can understand that is something that comes up from time to time. And I'm just interested to know who else I should be talking to and what questions you might have. And I think the last slide is just my contact information. So.
Susan, this is Dale Schmidt. So I have a question. So working with these other Beloit and La Crosse and other areas, is there a method of getting the public to know that you exist? How are you doing that, or how are they doing that? Because that's where a lot of this input, besides the person that's part of that, the information would come from, where there's an issue.
So you're wondering how we get the word out about the academy itself? Is that your question?
Yes, correct. Yep.
Yeah. Well, part of it is meeting with groups like yours. So every place that has a bike ped committee or commission, I've been able to speak to. Beloit does not have, they don't have that in place. So that was a little different. But I do some research trips, and I talk to, typically I talk to city staff. If there's always advocates, like if I ask who's an advocate for pedestrian safety or bicycling or disability rights, usually there are names that come to the top that I get. If there's a transit commission that I could, either that I can talk to them or meet with members of, I always send communication out to city council members. Now, I don't always get a response, but that's, I push that out. We do some stuff on social media as well, and I always write up a blurb that can go out in newsletters. So it's a lot of word of mouth, but I'm, intentionally doing a lot of outreach too.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from anybody? Susan, like I said, she came to Wello and presented there. This is something for the greater Green Bay area. It's not just specific to Green Bay, and that was one of the questions I had. And as a bicycle and pedestrian committee, I thought some of you might be interested in sharing your insight or getting involved in the academy, and that was the reason I had asked Susan to come to our meeting to present this information. Just to get input, and you guys have been working on it for quite a while and have some knowledge and expertise that you could probably share as well. But any other questions for Susan? I know the dates are not set or nothing set in stone yet. You're looking at obviously 2025, but not anything definite or definitive yet as far as timeline.
Yeah, it's not set in stone, and I think it's most likely going to be next fall. Yeah, I've done, since we've started, I've done one every semester. So, winter, spring, and then in the fall. I don't think there's really time to pull it all together for early enough next year to be done before stuff just really ramps up in the spring. So probably next fall. So that gives me some time to plan and figure out, the best curriculum. But we don't have dates. That's correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions, everybody, for Susan? Anything?
Thank you for presenting.
Yes, thank you for coming. We appreciate it. And keep us in touch. Keep us in the loop on when it is and when you get the details done, and we'll certainly help get it out and encourage people to attend as well.
Yeah, and one last thing I'll throw out there, and this kind of speaks to the first question too, is that I'm always working, because I don't live in the cities where I'm taking this academy, I always work with at least one or two, if not more, sort of liaisons that are my main points of contact that help me understand what's going on, who I should be talking to. So I really appreciate that you invited me here, and please reach out if you have any thoughts or questions for me.
Thank you, and thank
Yep.
you for taking the time today. We appreciate it. Feel
Absolutely.
free to stay if you have any interest. Otherwise, take off.
I might have to stare at the back of my
I
head.
think I need to
Yeah.
go, but thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you, Susan.
Hi.
All right, then we're gonna go on to 6B, consider, discuss, act on the recommendation to village board for project priorities for the next year and 5-year capital improvement plan. Now, I did hand out this document, so if everyone could grab this. The document that was attached is kind of hard to go through because there's so much to it. I was telling Joel that. The document I handed out these are the ones that we approved at our July meeting for priorities for coming from the Bike Ped Committee. Since that time, Joel and staff have sat down and looked at all you can see how many there are in your packet there of all, the capital type things that come in from all the different departments. So I thought this might be easier for you to remember and to look at, and then looking through that big document. Where the numbers are in there, like PW 17 is Public Works Project 17, and that corresponds to the document you have in there, and it's on page 5 of that document. So I thought it would be easier to look at it that way. It might be a little clearer because we already looked at all of these projects. So there weren't a lot of changes that we talked about it briefly at Village Board the other night. But I just thought it would be important to come back because we did shift some things, and one of them, Leroy's not going to be real happy.
I see it. Yeah, and there's a reason for that.
There is a reason for that, and there's, obviously, like I said, the staff is balancing a lot of different projects, not just the maybe 8 or 9, I guess, that we have here that came from Bike Ped. So.
Yeah, and so there is a cover memo in the packet that is similar to what was presented in July, so you can kind of run some comparisons between the two. So I appreciate Tracy running it from the July meeting to August, because I did not do that on the cover page. But so it may be easier to reference both cover pages, one from July, one from today's meeting. And I also want to note that this is just specific to road projects. There are a number of trail projects that are also incorporated into the CIP. So I'll touch on those briefly so that you have those, and then we'll touch on the road projects. So the high priorities for 2025 from a trail standpoint is the extension of the Ashwaubenon River Trail. So, we crossed over the creek this past 2 years ago now, almost 2 seasons ago, if you will. And so now Rex he already bid out the work. It's already been designed. It was bid out. Based on the timing of that work and the availability of contractors, bid prices came in extremely high. The board rejected those bids. I believe you're going to be bidding that out again in November, December. And then that'll be completed in 2025. We do anticipate getting much more favorable bids on that project. The other one that is, exactly. The other one that should be of note that Rex is currently working on is the Argonne Park Trail Boardwalk project. So if you recall, we were working with not only with our property, but also Packer-owned property tied to the Cabela site, and that boardwalk would be incorporated into the woods and provide a nice amenity for those 2 items. There's some other maintenance type projects, some trail patches and things like that are also incorporated in the CIP, but I won't go into too much detail there. So from a road standpoint, or a side path, if you will, or road trail projects that are immediately adjacent to a road, the main projects for next year are going to include the South Point bike lane installation. So if you recall, this committee recommended to the board to install bike and parking lanes along South Point Road from the Green Bay jurisdictional line to Highway 172. The board was in agreement to that. It would just have to be incorporated into the budget for 2025. So that item is being proposed as part of the 2025 operating budget. That's consistent with both this committee's recommendation and village board. This committee also reviewed possible changes to the Holmgren Way corridor. Although the board was not in agreement with the full-scale recommendations, A number of other talking points came from that, and that was the discussion about those rectangular rapid flashing beacons at very specific crossing points along Holmgren and then also along Cormier. So if you recall, in the media, or maybe we've talked about it at the committee level, there's a pretty substantial development that's happening on the corner of Cormier and Holmgren. That's going to incorporate some additional housing units, retail sites, and then substantial parking areas for Capital Credit Union Park and the Epic Event Center. So now that that corner is being developed and we kind of have an idea of what their site plan is and where those crossing points may be, the budget includes 3 RRFBs, in that project, 1 on Cormier and 2 on Holmgren. Those are being funded through the tax incremental finance district that's supporting that project. In addition to that, as part of the last conversation, Cormier Road has that sidewalk on the north side of Cormier. That's in pretty rough condition, or at least substantial portions of it. So that project is basically the full replacement of that Cormier sidewalk from Ridge to Shady. So there are sections of the sidewalk that are in decent condition, but because we're replacing the other panels of sidewalk through a vast majority of that, for grade issues and maintaining accessibility, we're going to basically replace the entire section. So that's that particular project. So that's 2025. There are substantial dollars being allocated to all of those projects. And so I think that's a good list of work that's going to be completed. I guess I'll pause there at 2025 and see if there's any questions on the projects that are scheduled for next year. I think they're all being talked about at this committee level, and they've been discussed pretty heavily at the board level too. So I think all of them are high priority items.
So I've got a question. I just want to make sure that everyone's comfortable with this. The 2 rapid flashing beacons on Holmgren, one on Marvell and one on, what is that, base settlement? Those are, or not base settlement. Bayland, sorry.
Yeah,
It's just my personal opinion, so I'm not a voting member here, but they seem to be fairly close to one another. And I can see a lot of herky-jerky traffic movement because you've got 2 of them really close to one another where, and again, this is just me, on Bayland, if they wanted to go to the Epic, they could just go up to Cormier. If they wanted to go to the Rocker Stadium, they could just go to Marvell and use the rapid beacon flashing there. Does anyone else, I mean, am I the only one that has a concern with that?
Is it, I've not been there for pedestrian events, but is it likely that people would be using both of those crossings at the same time, or sometimes when they use one and sometimes the other? So no, they're both going to cross on both places.
Because it's right here and then where's
Right there.
Marvell is right here, and the Bayland is that cul-de-sac to the south.
Yeah.
Other direction. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe it would be fine, but I'm not.
I think that I agree with Rex that I think that we should have a traffic engineer look at this and decide where they go. I mean, we got the report from Brown County, and Kohlrangi recommended RFBs, but I don't know where they were. I don't know if he made specifics.
I can see Marvell.
But maybe someone, even the one on Epic is very close potentially to the intersection. So my feeling, I think we should get an engineering firm to look at it more closely and make sure if we're going to do it, we're going to spend the money, that they're done properly and they're done right and that they're in the right places.
So I'm not real familiar with this at all. Bayland Court, is there a lot of foot traffic because of parking lots on the other side of the street?
Yeah, so this is Bayland Court here, Dale.
There, thank you.
And then Marvell here. So this is Village Hall.
Yep.
Here. The crossing at Cormier would be in this general location. It's right on the border of this property that's being developed. That will get you to the Epic. So part of the development of this corner has a trail that runs and wraps around the entire parking lot.
All right.
So this trail would connect to sidewalk on the south side that would get people to the Epic Event Center. So that's the idea here. And these are just those intersections. So rather than have a mid-block where people are not likely to cross, they were planned.
Well, that was my question. So there must be parking in there on Bayland and some of those businesses that they park across the street.
Yeah, there's on-street parking for sure during
Okay.
games, and then there's some parking here as well. But again, it's a matter of the location of where those rapid flashing beacons are in relation to the intersections. Now, with that, they're being located at an intersection. So for pedestrian is set to cross at that intersection, motorists have to yield anyway. So,
When is the additional parking anticipated to be? Because I think
They
having
used it
that,
already.
like, but they'll have more there after with the new parking, or will there be about the same amount? So I'm just
Much
curious.
more.
I was gonna say, that's what I thought, because the goal of that is to not have as much on-street parking.
right,
So there may be less people crossing that you could also potentially go down to one of those versus two with
could be.
the additional parking that's gonna be coming for the Rockers or for different.
And I'm not doing it to save money or anything.
No, but
I
it's
just see there
confusing
being,
too.
you're stopping at,
Was it at Bayland and Marvell?
You would have
Yeah,
there's three.
if I'm going north,
driving.
I'm stopping here at the light, right? And then I'm stopping here, and then I'm stopping here. And then it just seems like there's a lot of stops.
Well,
And,
if a pedestrian is there crossing,
And you'll
that's
stop
why the
anyway.
motorist has to yield.
but absolutely, I'm not saying that.
So you're saying that the flasher's there if they want to press it, whether if it's not flashing, the car can go through anyway. So if there's nobody standing there,
Right now, if there's a pedestrian waiting to cross,
they gotta stop.
there's support from yield. So the rapid flashing beacon is intended to alert the motorist that there is a pedestrian waiting to cross.
I live on Corby Road, so often I will take Corby down to Ashland if I'm gonna go that way. And I know that I will stop at a red light at Ridge, I will stop at a red light at San Luis, I will stop at Oneida Street, I will stop at Holmgren, and I will stop at Ashland. And I don't know, but in my own mind, I'm convinced that's intentional to slow cars down. The timing, and
Maybe, yeah.
maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but I think it's to slow cars down. So if that's the case, and if that's sort of the philosophy of the village, having people make those 3 stops is gonna slow traffic down, which from that standpoint of protecting pedestrians is not a bad. So it's gonna be inconvenient for drivers to make those extra stops. But we're not the vehicle transportation committee, we're the bicycle and pedestrian safety committee. So if slowing traffic down and inconvenience drivers increases safety for bicyclists and pedestrians, I'm not sure that's a bad thing, for those drivers who experience a little bit of inconvenience.
Is it only during like the beginning of a Rockers game or the beginning of something and at the end? It's not gonna interrupt while the event is going on, is it? I mean, isn't it a certain time?
It might be, but I don't think it would be multiple times like you would after they're leaving or coming, right? Somebody still might leave the game early and want to cross the road.
Yeah.
Well, and I think this is in the budget, so we all probably agree that it's something that's needed, and I think there's lots of, there's like comments and questions and details, so I think it's just something that staff is gonna have to do. Maybe do some more research and figure it out, make sure it's done properly, comments that are made may be valid, some are, some aren't, and it's gonna be a change, and it's gonna be a change for, hopefully for the safety of the pedestrians out there, and that's what we're looking at.
And I certainly don't want to see the village spend money where they don't need to.
Right.
But from the
No, do it
safe
right,
standpoint,
do it right.
if we put these in and we find out they're not working, we can take them out. I don't know what it costs to put one of those up at an intersection, but it's not like you're reconfiguring the intersection to put that up.
I'm sure there's a lot.
Okay, so that's
2026.
2025. 2026, there were a number of items that were shifted. So from the previous list of items, we had Hanson Road sidewalk extension from I-41 to Ravencrest Apartments. And then the Main Avenue Trail sidewalk extension, that would be on Main Avenue, obviously. The Hanson Road project was moved to 2027, 2028, primarily because there is a road reconstruction project that is planned for on Hanson Road between I-41 and Oneida Street. So in order to make those projects coincide with one another, some utility replacements on that section of Hanson, there was a request to kind of lump those projects together and get them done at the same time. So that was the basis for shifting that to the 2027, 28.
Or something?
Yeah, underground utilities, yeah. In addition to that, the section that is really concerning to Leroy, I don't know if you've been out there, but I know you have, but there's a number of buried utilities that are located on that south side that are going to be in conflict with where that sidewalk would be. So we're going to need an extra bit of time because we're going to have to probably have all of those utilities relocated in order to accommodate the sidewalk project. So our utility project is from I-41 to Oneida Street. From I-41 west to Raven's Crest, there's a number of utility poles, boxes that have to get moved or shifted. So there's quite a bit of engineering work that would have to take place to get those moved. So that gives us that bit of time. That's why. It's still a priority.
Yeah, well, I kind of, I met two people walking down there when I came down here today. I mean,
Did you?
so I mean,
That's good.
it's an everyday occurrence, and I mean, thankfully, nobody has been hit or anything, and then those people just don't want to walk on the other side of the street.
So
There's a
that's
sidewalk.
a good,
So, I mean,
good conversation and a segue between the rapid flashing beacons and where they should be located.
Right.
If we don't find a desire to have 3 located down on Holmgren and Cormier, let's say we choose one at Holmgren, one on Cormier, and we have one, does it make sense to even relocate it on Hanson by Raven's Crest to get people, have a mid-block crossing there and get people to the north side, and that adds some encouragement. I think there's
when
opportunity.
I know it's not going to change, but I mean, I don't know if you've noticed it, Tracy, but I have noticed that I see kids on these electric scooters going on Hanson Road. I mean, they're going, I don't know, they seem to be going like 25 miles an hour, I guess. I don't know if they are or not, but I see them also on, and they're again, they don't go on the sidewalk. They're on that side of the street. So even with the sidewalk there, I mean, they're going up and down the street. They're not going on the sidewalk. It's just
Well, we're going to discuss that at the next meeting.
Yes.
We can certainly put that in there, and it could be a
Because we
conversation.
were going to do it last week, and then
Oh, the e-bikes and stuff?
Yeah, so that'll be in whenever staff has a chance to get going on it, then we'll talk
because
about
those
that.
scooters are considered
Yeah.
governed under the laws regarding bicycles.
So it should be on the.
Yeah, stay on topic here.
So the rapid flashing beacons, are we sending that for someone to take a look and report back to us? Where did that land when we were discussing?
Oh, with the 2 streets.
Yes.
We were gonna
Yeah,
talk,
I agree.
yeah, I was gonna mention that on the items for next agenda. Maybe we could look at that a little further. So that probably would be the place to put something like that. If there's something that comes out of here that we think, okay, let's do some more and put it on as an agenda item. So keep that in mind.
Okay.
And then we could ask for it. And maybe it would be ready next agenda, but maybe we say, okay, can you get it to us in January or December or whenever the staff can get to it. So that's a perfect example of pushing it to the next agenda, putting it on the list.
I would leave it as status quo as far as where the timeline is.
Yes.
But then,
Yeah.
add it to next agenda, and maybe we add that conversation about Hanson Road, because that's a good opportunity. Even if sidewalk gets placed on the south side, having that mid-block crossing would be beneficial as well.
And maybe we'll all take a drive on Hanson Road and look at it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The next meeting. So
And your
it's
scooter?
fresh. Don't have one.
Take your bike. There's bike lanes on that.
Well, that's what I kind of thought, that, if it went to the committee, maybe a lot of those people don't know they've probably never been there to see the people walking and the scooters going up and down the street on Hanson Road.
Right.
It's, I mean, that's just like, like saying I was, maybe something is going on in another street and I think to myself, you know what, I don't know what's going on there because I haven't been there,
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I don't know, it's been on the agenda for,
Ever.
Yeah.
But it's got a place,
We're working.
we're working on it.
The other item that was shifted from 2026 was Main Avenue trail/sidewalk extension. That is the extension that to the trail that was completed a couple of years back on Main Avenue. Again, that was originally 2026. Main Avenue, that section is County Trunk Highway. So we were having some concerns with the design of that project on Main Avenue. There is a river crossing on the very east end of the project area, and there's beam guard on the south side of Main Avenue that extends for a few hundred feet. That beam guard is right in the way of where the sidewalk or trail would go in order to connect over the bridge. So we'd have to move the beam guard. Sounds like an easy task, but the grade on the backside of the beam guard is too steep, so they can't place the beam guard on that. And so we also found out that the county is planning on doing a bridge redecking on that bridge in 2028. So the plan is to tie the removal of the beam guard, the grading, the bridge abutment, and the bridge decking and the trail to coincide with the county's project. So again, not
that's convenient.
fortunate that we have to move the project forward, but it'll tie into, and the county will take care of it.
Okay, so now that we're on Main Avenue, are we able to also talk about, because isn't there going to be some development now in that area on the south west side of 41? So do we want to
That
for
maybe
the
could go on
next-
the next agenda because I know that.
well, it's
the
Main Avenue.
Well, I just not noted it on there, sorry.
Yeah, I'll talk about it briefly because I think there's some ties to two projects there. We have one on Main Avenue, and then we have the Ridge Road sidewalk extension in 2028. So just to kind of give you a brief orientation here, I'll show my screen.
Yeah, I know. But she sold it to a developer.
Then maybe explain to the group, because maybe some people didn't catch that development coming.
Yeah, and it's not officially finalized.
No, it's true, it isn't official.
So the Pagels property here, there's about 40 acres of property here and here that is being proposed for a mixed-use development, mixed use of residential, so single-family homes.
Why doesn't cross street so people know where the heck you're at?
So Arts Lane is right here. It's like this 10-foot wide town road from back in the day when I was in Lawrence. This is Pagel's Place, I believe. What is that name of that street? I forget the name of that. Misty Meadows subdivision's right here. This is at Woods Edge subdivision.
Cedar Park.
Sand Acres Park is right here. This is Sand Acres Drive, obviously.
That's Ridge.
Or Ridge, excuse me.
Yeah.
So
Lane
what the development would do is it would extend Pagel's Place through the development and then eventually kind of dead end here with an eventual extension up to Main if and when this property owner sells. There's eventual connection here into Woods Edge that would provide that connectivity through the subdivision. Part of the development, there's a trail that runs along the utility corridor that would extend through the development. And then also we're working with the developer to try to get that to wrap around the wooded part of the property here. That will eventually, if that road gets connected, bring you back up to me.
Nice.
Then would that come out up near the Capital Credit Union building up there?
Yeah, Capital Credit Union building's right here. So if that trail came up, it would be to the east of
Okay.
Capital Credit.
So I know we had a short discussion on this in July, maybe June. And we talked about whether the sidewalk on Ridge was necessary if we were going to put the trail in.
Yeah, and so that's the you're exactly right, Rex. 2028 project.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
are we
that
still
was-
looking at a trail or a
Well,
sidewalk?
that's kind of our question too, is what do we want to do?
How we nix that?
We could extend it down here, but you're going to be upsetting, that's going to be a tough
Oh, yeah.
challenge for those existing residents. I think you're going to make some people angry. So if you're willing to make people upset, then keep it in there. But if you have that connectivity, is it necessary?
So where would that connect into Ridge?
The sidewalk or the trail?
Just the trail.
So the trail would eventually connect to the cul-de-sac here at Arts Lane.
Okay.
But then this subdivision is new, and so it has to comply with the village's sidewalk requirements. So there would be sidewalk on the village streets in here. But the trail would also extend along, it would go to the east to this wooded area. It's really kind of pretty back here.
Yeah.
And then eventually make its way back up to Maine. So that's their activity that way.
So you're talking, okay, so the sidewalk, if we did it on Ridge, would be Pagel's Place to Maine, so that it would benefit or kind of be married with sidewalks that are going to be installed in the subdivision. I got you.
Yeah, and that, to your point, then maybe you don't need that there because you can go down further and take it on Sand Acres.
Right. Or if you want to go,
Trail.
if you want to go south, you take the trail. Right. If you want to go north, you can take the trail or the sidewalk.
Who's got the land behind the credit union building there?
This is that same Alice Pagel's LLC.
And it's okay, that's all Pagels.
So this whole, it's kind of a goofy shaped lot. It encompasses this and it kind of meanders and it goes all the way to the creek.
Okay.
That's all incorporated in that development. It's about 40 acres of land. The item that's not included is the old homestead here.
That'd be nice if that was, because then you could get to.
This is that bridge deck right here, and that beam guard extends pretty far to the west, and that's what the county would take care of. So again, that leaves that Ridge Road sidewalk. So maybe, because again, this is 4 or 5 years out, so we got some time to evaluate as to what will come from that. And then at the end of 2028, it should be noted that we're starting to work towards utility reconstructions. So our water and sewer utilities are getting to a point where we're going to begin the process of reconstructing or replacing old mains within our road infrastructure. Morris Avenue happens to be one of the first roads where we're going to begin doing some heavy utility work. So that section of road is between Barberry and Oneida. And if you recall, that street is identified in the bike and ped plan as a street that would get sidewalks on. So that would have sidewalk on that section.
Can I just go back real quick to where it's listed on the capital project, so a list with all the projects?
Yep.
It does not have sidewalk listed on it, Joel, it just has Morris Avenue construction, Barberry to Oneida. Could sidewalk be added to that
It's a
definition?
sidewalk.
On
Maybe in the
the
title.
other document, the capital one that has all of it. Let's see, it's Public Works
It just says
31.
Morris Avenue reconstruction.
Yeah.
That's it. And then it gives the location Barberry to Oneida.
Yeah, because it doesn't say sidewalk, some of the other ones say sidewalk, but that one's not, and that, it said it has sidewalk, and then there's a couple other ones that, on that particular document, maybe I give it to you later, don't say where they are, it says like, Morris Avenue, it doesn't say where in Morris or whatever.
Yeah, we can add that to the title.
Just to make it, there's a couple that have sidewalks missing, and then a couple that don't have any location, they just say it's such and such a road, but it doesn't say from where to where, so.
Can we back up to the 22 because we may have to add this to the agenda. I'm not sure how this works, but so if this proposal goes through for this Pagel, right? I'm hoping, or I don't want to assume, we'll be involved in maybe being able to ask about the trail.
Absolutely, we could add that as an agenda item.
Yeah.
That was one of on my list for that.
Okay.
As far as the location, so when the preliminary PUD will go to the village board at the end of this month, and at that point, we can certainly bring that back through committee for next month.
Okay.
So I think they're gonna get into more detailed site plans then at that point, because they'll have to come back through all the various committees and commissions to get final approval.
Okay.
And there'll be a public hearing then for that. So we can bring that PUD back to the committee and have that conversation.
If I've learned anything from the people who've been in this a long time and from you is if we can do it while there's something else being done, we got a better chance of getting it completed.
And it seems like the developers are pretty interested in providing those amenities through development, more so than maybe other developers in the past where they're looking at it more from a cost control. Yeah, they're more interested in quality of living components to their overall.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, developer like that, I like it.
Well, it is local
doesn't
developer,
happen.
I think that helps.
Yeah, that's.
They were gonna make the lots smaller, but weren't
Yeah, so, so very similar to Woods Edge subdivision. So these are the smaller lots here.
they? Yeah.
So the single family lots will be very, very similar to that. but they will be owner occupied homes. So think of that as a great location for maybe individuals looking to downsize, but still affordable.
Yeah, exactly.
That's hard work.
Yeah.
Any other questions or concerns on the CIP?
No, I just, with the changes we had, I just wanted people to know that things have been shifted a little bit on the documents.
So do we need any action?
This is informational, maybe for the, well, when we get to next,
Yeah,
the next agenda, we have a couple things that we'll add. That I have noted
Unless
on
there's
there.
something specific to the recommended project list.
Yeah, is there any changes or anything? I mean, if you look at your list I gave you, it has some of the documents that are, should be added. Any other questions on that, you guys? And obviously, you know, the 2028 project, that's, you know, a few years off, so things change, you know, when that capital project is put together the next year, there may be some things that shift around again.
But
So,
this is,
and we'll look
this
at
is
it again.
perfect.
This is, yeah, just to give you an idea since it did shift a bit. All right, if there's no other discussion on that, we will go to the update on the status of the 2025 comprehensive bicycle and pedestrian plan. We've talked about this a couple times, and we've had the original plan was done in 2009, which is 15 years ago. It's been updated twice by the committee since that time. And it really needs to be overhauled again. So I know Joel has been reaching out to Brown County and they have not made a decision yet on what they're going to do.
Yeah, in our conversations with Cole, it was they can do it. It's a matter of whether they can fit it within their overall work plan for 2025. They have not made any commitments to it yet. Their primary concern was if this is going to involve some very heavy lifting from them as far as public engagement and gathering. Then they felt that they were a little less inclined to take on the project if this was an update where there isn't a whole lot of extra meetings and gatherings and activities, and they likely could do it. To that point, I mentioned that either staff here, whether it be Aaron, Will, myself, Rex, we can do quite a bit of that heavy lifting internally ourselves and just provide the data and the information if desired. And so they seemed pretty agreeable to that. So as long as everything goes smoothly with their budget for 2025, then they should be able to do it, but they couldn't make a firm commitment yet until that budget's been kind of worked through. I think the last conversation I had with Cole would have been, I think in June or July, so they were still submitting budget information to the county. I would suspect that in the next few weeks, we'll have a better picture as to whether or not they can take on the work. In the event that they can't, then ultimately we'll have to decide the best process. We'll likely probably need to bring in a third-party contractor, some type of engineering consultant to come in and aid and assist in the preparation of that plan.
Yeah. And I think it needs a major overhaul. I mean, we've updated it 3 times, and I think it really needs to be looked at and have either Brown County involved. I mean, the amount of work for it, like you said, even with staff taking on a bunch of Brown County doesn't take that on. It's a lot of work doing those plans. So
I would prefer not to.
I think it would
We
be
have a
better.
draft going on, so.
Yeah, I think so. That's the thing, there's too much going on, and I think getting an outside contractor would be best. So I just wanted to update you guys on that, where we're at. That'll be something in 2025 that we'll have to take on too. Any questions on that or any suggestions on that, anybody? Yeah.
I would just want to hear more, as we debate whether to wait to when Brown County has capacity or go to an outside contractor. I'd want to know the benefits of each, because there's probably some benefits to having Brown County, that cross flow of information. I would just want to hear like a further thought from all of you on that.
Sure.
Next agenda item is items for the next agenda. These are the things that I had listed, made the ordinance updates for the bicycles, the e-bikes, scooters, pedestrians, all that stuff. And again, if staff, when staff can get to that and bring something back. So that was one thing that was pending a bit. Maybe the RFPs, plan for Home Grant and Cormier, who to design, where, et cetera. So maybe put that on so we can have some further discussion on that. The Pagel, Alice Pagel's development, the one out by Sand Acres Park, bring that when it's the time to bring back to a bike ped. And then the other thing I was thinking of is because Brown County is not doing that bridge until 2028, so the Main Street project's pushed back a bit. So maybe it would be wise to look at some of the other crossings that we have going to De Pere so people can get to De Pere safely by foot and by bike. So look at some of the south crossings that we have and see if there's maybe some low-hanging fruit type changes that we can make on those crossings to make it easier for people to get across, since this one's going to be back a little bit. So, whether it's, looking at a push button somewhere that makes it easier or whatever to get across, or, the roundabout at Glory, maybe there's some, something anticipating to get to there. So just looking at those other crossings and see if there's something that can be done to make those easier, since this one is pushed back so many years now. So that was the other agenda item that I kind of was thinking about. Does anybody, did I miss anything? Anybody have any other agenda items that you would like to see?
My question would be is if we want to hear a report, let's say from Brian Murphy or from Brian Rickert.
Okay.
How do we make that happen? Because or maybe Rex can fill us in, but some of our projects, there's things being done and I'm not aware of that. Or they may even be close to being completed, that we can pull them off of the list. So how do we, if we can't have that discussion here, how do we learn that?
Well, maybe staff can make those determinations. So Rex knows that, hey, I got some stuff to share with Bike Ped. I want to do a report at the October meeting or whatever. Or Brian Murphy says, hey, I got some stuff I would like to share. So they're the ones to say, okay, I want to bring a staff report and these are the items I'm going to put on it. So maybe leaving it to them to make that decision and staff to decide when they want to go. I mean, we will have stuff too, maybe, and we can say, okay, like Rex, what about this project? Can you please report on that at the next meeting? So we could pursue that as well. If there's things.
But that would work too, because that's basically what they're doing anyway. So they're updating us, so they have the knowledge.
Right.
And if they can do
I
that.
think we need to ask them to do that. Just say, Rex, if there's something that we need to know about, would you please make sure that we tell it? Or Brian, or
I plan on working with Joel and Patrick just on how we can make that happen.
Well, thank you.
It's doable, but still fits within
the guidelines,
the new standards.
Yeah.
So I'm with you. I think it's important for everything that we do to be transparent and get the word out to the people, because otherwise, to me, that's how they trust us, is they know what we're doing.
Yeah.
So we gotta push that stuff out. So I will work with them and see how we can best do that. So.
That'd be great. Okay. Anything else, anybody, for next agenda? No. All right. Then I would make a motion, or want a motion to adjourn, please. So moved. Jessica.
I'll second.
Second by Dale. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Motion carried. Thank you, everybody.